Now again, make sure you watch the video all the way through because, again, I got really important things talking about the diversions that could be in play at the support zone or just under this area. But again, you've got a diversions complete now because the RSI doesn't look at the close. But we've had these signals over here, these bullish signals surrounding the 200 period moving average. Now we're testing it again. I've tried to flip bullish, turn back to bearish, the momentum line's bearish. So again, we'll be watching balance of power turn back to bearish. We'll be watching what happens at the support zone. Again, we're likely in a bottoming process that's either going to give us a higher low in the support zone here or take it out and bottom out. Again, Bitcoin's average price is directly below the 50-week moving average and all the things you'll see in this video, the trend line of support directly below the video all the way through. Bitcoin had the diversions on some indicators already, like right here with momentum, could be forming a triple bullish divergence now, or have a divergence with the RSI, and again, we're just getting a higher low here, that it's still diverging with the closes over here. Then again, we'll need to see momentum turn back into positive territory to turn it around. So again, I'm watching the support zone, watching the support levels directly below our low from a couple of weeks ago here at the 74 to 77,000 area. Momentum tried to turn bullish, it failed. Again, we're likely in a bottoming process. Momentum can flip, then we got to flip everything back to bullish. You got the cloud, it tried to flip here, it failed. And then our ribbon is still bearish, and this is a short-term trend right here. It's still bearish. All these things are still bearish. We're still below the 100 period moving average. So again, we'll see if we could carve out a bottom above the low here or just below it at the trend line of support. Watch the video all the way through. Now, Bitcoin having dropped over 6%, 6.39% during the Sunday session, we've come back into the support zone right here. Okay, and if we can break the declining trend line, if we can start climbing higher, and you can come up here and challenge this resistance zone now and the declining trend line that I talked about, you can start getting above 94, 95,000 in this area here, then you might have a higher low. But if you end up taking out the support zone, the risk is we come back and take out this low right here. Now, bars are still red, reflecting the momentum here. So we're testing the support. We're trying to get a bounce here. We're up a 1.25%, but the bars are still red, so we may lose this area. What I'm watching right now is, does this support zone hold, or do we lose it and go down to the trend line in this video? Trend line of support, the 50-week moving average on Bitcoin, which again, NASDAQ's testing the 50-week, S&P's testing the 50-week. You'll see all of that in this video. What I'll be watching for in the Monday session is, do we break the trend line and see the bars flip back to green and bounce, or do we bounce and end up breaking this level, or do we just not get any kind of real meaningful bounce at all, just a little feeble bounce and end up breaking this level? So we'll be watching this low very closely go into the Monday session. But right now, this is what we have right now. Have a rally with the crypto strategic reserve. It failed, a higher low, and a failure to get a higher high above that area, and coming back and testing the support zone. So that's where we stand right now. Now, momentum and the trend are still bearish in the daily time frame, but we've got to see the bulls be able to flip things back to bullish here. We still have red bars reflecting the trend. Be able to flip them back to green if this is going to turn around. And then we got to be able to break the downward trend line that I've been talking about. You'll see it in the video. If we take out this low, again, you got major support, the major trend line in the weekly time frame. Watch the video all the way through and you'll see that. It's important to pay attention to this stuff. The support zone, horizontal support being tested right now. If that breaks, you've got the rising support, or 50-week moving average, which you'll see shortly. Talk about the divergences in the 4-hour time frame real fast. We had the bullish divergence set up here, and we had in the 4-hour time frame the big rebound back up to the 200 period. And then we've come back down. We tested that low. We got a higher low, and that was at the 200 period in the daily. And we got a higher low here. Now we've come back up, and gotten rejection at the 200 again. That's near that 20 period moving average where we keep getting rejection in the daily time frame. And we turn back down, and now we're at that support zone. So we're at the support zone, and now it's a moment of truth. Are we going to go a little bit lower and bottom out? Now, when we go a little bit lower, everybody's going to be screaming bloody murder that, we're collapsing, and again, it's going to either bottom or bottom at the support zone, one or the other. Now, if we get a higher low, you can confirm a higher low here on the RSI, or we may take out this level and get another reference point of a divergence. It was a divergence over here that marked this peak right here. Common on the 4-hour chart, as I've talked about. In stochastic, try to turn back up with testing that support zone, but you still can form a bullish divergence here on Pring parameter. Again, notice Pring parameter has been in the negative region here. Pring parameter, since we've lost the 200 period moving average, that's a black line right there. We tried to get back above it, but right after that, we saw Pring parameter go negative, and it's been negative ever since. So again, could be forming a divergence. Maybe it's not done yet. We'll see what happens. So I'm showing you the weekly trend line and the weekly 50-week moving averages, the EMA and the SMA. 4-hour chart here of Bitcoin testing the support zone at the moment. Our second hour of trading still, and we're up still about 1.25%. Let me just say this. In order to turn this around, and let me just show you the MACD. Possible diversions could be in play or confirmation of a higher low. But in order to turn this around, we've got to get back above the 50, back above the 200, and then the 50's got to get back above the 200. Okay? And right now we have the 50 getting that bearish death cross holding below the 200 period. In order for Bitcoin to recover, you got to get back above the 50, back above the 200, and then that 50 has to get a golden cross above the 200 period moving average. A lot of signals are forming divergences. Now, it may be done, or we may end up taking that level out and going a little bit lower and hitting the trend line in the weekly time frame. I'll talk about that, but you've got divergences that could be forming. Could be complete if at the support zone or just below the support zone. It's still possible this low holds as a bottom. I'll show you the trend line in the weekly time frame, and that could hold if we exclude the shadow in the weekly time frame. Directly below, you got our 50-week moving averages. You got divergences going everywhere in the daily time frame. Now, same thing here. Again, divergences forming everywhere. We don't have to take this low out. We very well could. But you've got divergences that could be done or nearly done if we end up taking this low out right here and going a little bit lower. Again, key support below the 78,000 low at 74,000 to 77,000. Key support there. But you've got divergences developing everywhere. The MACD, the RSI here, momentum indicators all over the place. We're in a bottoming process. The question is, do we take out the support zone and go hit the trend line of support, the 50-week moving average, or do we hold above that support zone? Okay, Bitcoin just closed out the Sunday session, dropping 6.36%. That's this bar right here, going into the support zone. Now, we've just started the Monday session. We're currently up 0.58% at the moment. We're in the first hour of trading to be watching the support zone. If we break it, that trend line I've been talking about comes into play. Bitcoin is likely forming a divergence. It may be with the higher low here. The RSI doesn't look at the shadows. I should talk about that in a moment. And again, you can look at right here, see my other oscillators. Again, we had this divergence right here. Possibly we get a higher low or a lower low at the trend line of support that I've been talking about. So far, Bitcoin has rallied back up off of the 200 period, stalled at the 20 period, dropped back down, tested the 200 again, and then stalled again, once again at the 20 period moving average. Now we're testing the 200 yet again. Now this time, before we closed, or we tested the 200, we dropped below it, we got bottoming tails. We did not close below it. This time we closed below it. NASDAQ did. You know, NASDAQ's testing the 50-week moving average. Bitcoin is just above the 50-week moving average, testing it, and S&P is testing the 50-week moving average. They're all testing it. Nasdaq's testing, I'll go to you in a minute, Nasdaq's testing the 2022 trend line. Bitcoin's testing the 2023 trend line. If we take out this low, we could still reach that area, and then you would have divergence, including the shadow. Right now, you still have a divergence just on a closing basis, which again may be it. We may try to bounce at the support zone. Currently up 0.68 as I'm making the video. We're in the first hour of trading. I'll be watching as we go into next week. Key horizontal support on the S&P, key rising support on the Nasdaq. If they try to bounce, does Bitcoin bounce? Then I'll be watching this trend line on Bitcoin, where we can even exclude the shadow right here as well. But I'll be watching the trend line. Do we clear it? And then if we do we get back above the resistance zone now, the lower high and this peak right here with the announcement of the crypto strategic reserve? Got to be able to clear the trend line. Got to be able to clear the resistance. I just put the trend line back. You can see, again, this is a resistance zone right here. And that's the trend line of resistance. Right above that peak right there is where a 50-period moving average is, 100 period above that. So we got to start being able to get back and gravitate to these levels and get above this 94, 95,000 area, this high right here, and this declining trend line. And that is, we need to be able to clear the 94,000 area and then be able to get back above this high over here, clearing 95,000 and into 96,000. This is it's 94, 95,000 area. We got to clear that. If we rise up to the trend line, you've got a boatload of resistance. You've got the horizontal resistance, this pink shaded area right here, and you got all the VWAP resistance from the high here, the high over here, the low over here. You got a boatload of resistance. The lower high that's set up there, that's the VWAP resistance right there. So we've got to be able to climb back up. The risk is that we go back to this VWAP support area. This one right here is from the August low. This is from the March high. So the thing is, we go down to, again, I talked about that trend line. Remember the 2023 trend line I've talked about? If we end up forming a divergence by moving lower, actually moving lower rather than just closing basis, but actually move lower, this level then comes into play. This is at the 75,000 area. That's also where Bitcoin's average price is at. Currently, we're at the 200-period moving average. Bitcoin's average price is below that. So again, the risk is that if we take out the support zone, we come down to this area. But these are the levels of support and resistance. And here's our breakout of the last consolidation period. So you've got that peak at 74,000. And if I zoom out, you'll be able to see it. But let me show you where this green line is, and let me show you the 74,000 area. So here it is. This is, again, the daily chart. The blue line right here takes us all the way back to the August low. Okay, we already blew through the September low VWAP support. This is an anchored VWAP from that low. The anchored VWAP from the high over here in March of 2024 is the green line right there. That's the next level of support. That's also horizontal support, as I have been pointing out. We have that 74,000 area. It's just under 74,000, that peak right there. So you've got a lot of support in there. If we end up dropping down and hitting the trend line from the 2023 low, we're going to move down to this level right here, and then you'll complete the diversions here. Or it might be done here without dropping to a new low and just finding support at that 200-period moving average. It can play out either way. I've talked about the trend line, and I'm going to show it to you again because last update I didn't show you that trend line. I've been showing it to you. Could reach it if we end up dropping lower. We'll be watching. So let's take a look at that. But I want to point out, first of all, if you look at NASDAQ's weekly chart, we're hitting the 50-week and we're hitting the trend line from the 2022 low. Okay, we're hitting a major trend line. Now, at the 50 period, we're at the 50-week simple moving average, and we're at the 50-week EMA. They're both right at that same area and the trend line. The lighter green right here is the 50-week EMA. We overthrew it over here, but it acted as resistance, and then we got above it, and it acted as support, support, and here it is. So does Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is at the same level, the 50-week moving average, and I'll show it to you on Bitcoin real fast. But this is the NASDAQ. Could we bounce here? There's a confluence of support. Also, S&P is at key horizontal support. I'll link my latest video, about just over 20 minutes, and you could see the horizontal support on the S&P 500. So you've got some support coming in for the NASDAQ and for the S&P 500. It's a weekly chart. We're bouncing off the trend line. Here on NASDAQ, we're bouncing off the 50. That's what we did back over here. That's what we did back over here. Ever since we had the bottom in 2022, we've bounced off the 50-week moving average, and that's almost equivalent to the 200. In the daily, it's a little bit closer to the 40-week moving average. But again, we're bouncing off the 50-week moving average here. NASDAQ 100 weekly time frame and the trend line. Similar situation for the S&P. It's testing the 50-week simple moving average and the EMA. It's testing both of them right here at the same time. And testing horizontal support, key horizontal support, which I talk about in my Sunday update, which I'll link at the end of this video. So again, you got the NASDAQ testing the 50-week. You've got the S&P testing the 50-week. And Bitcoin is just above it. Oh, now we did breach the trend line here, but we're hitting major horizontal support. The trend line could change on the S&P 500. Trend lines change all the time, even in this current rising channel. The trend lines have changed a couple of times. Over here, we violated the trend line right here, and we had a channel going on. We violated it to expand the channel to change the trend line. Trend lines change, can change, and do change. So again, we have violated this trend line, but NASDAQ's hitting the key trend line of support at the 50-week moving average. So just keep that in mind. If we look at Bitcoin, surprise, surprise, it's at the 50-week moving average. And again, here I have the lighter line is the EMA, and the darker line is the SMA, and they're both right here, and that trend line is directly below. Now again, I told you before, the previous week we didn't reach it here, and we got that potential bottoming tail. Now we've come back and we're testing the supports, and we still may end up reaching it or bounce off of the support zone, one or the other, but a good chance you're going to try to bounce in this area. Last three consolidation periods. Okay, we had our consolidation right here, sideways. We didn't get the flush out move we did with the other two times, but here we bounced surrounding that 50 EMA. Here's the 50 simple moving average. Here's the EMA. We were just above the 50 simple moving average, and that began this trend line, and then we hit it right here. Look at this. We came back just below, and it seems to get traction off of this 50-week moving average, the EMA, the SMA, and I'm putting both in here because people look at EMAs, some people look at SMAs, and I wanted to put both in here so you could see that we're at both of those levels. So here, again, we tested the 50 simple moving average, and slightly breached it here, and here we were under that EMA, and then we bounced, and we reversed, and we broke out of this range here. This we had, again, as I've talked about, we've had a shakeout move right here in this consolidation. We had a couple of them, and you had the, oops, I went too far there. You had the first little shakeout right here, and then you had another bigger shakeout here that gave us that bottoming tail, and later we got that higher low in September. Here you didn't really get the shakeout move at all. You just had a test of the lows. Here we tested the lows. We had the shakeout. And right here we have the test of the lows and the shakeout move here for 2 weeks in a row, very similar to what we had over here. So as we're coming down, we're at this trend line of support. It's directly below, and we may see a big bounce off of that level this week, or if we can hold with our low from 2 weeks ago, then again it might be close but no cigar. But you want to be watching this because again, it's likely you're going to see a bounce in this area just above it or tagging this level this trend line of support. So just something worth paying attention to on Bitcoin. Bitcoin weekly chart. Pattern has been that we drop down to the trend line, drop down to the 50-week, and bounce. That's the pattern that has been played. Do we come down here a little bit lower and hit this level, or hold just above it and bounce? But again, we're almost there. We might still go ahead and reach this level. Here's our 50-week just below the trend line with the SMA and the EMA just right slightly below it there. So again, we'll be watching this trend line closely. Now, it could be that we exclude the shadow as well. Sometimes that happens, and we got the shadows over here. Could be we exclude the shadow and move it up just a little bit. And if so, look at, we're right at that trend line with our first low right there. If we exclude the shadows and we just use this low right here, and we're right at that right now. So again, it could be that if we get the higher low scenario, if our low over here holds at the support zone that we're testing right now, then we can bounce right here now. But if we end up going closer towards those 50-week moving averages, so we're fairly close with the low from 2 weeks ago, but if we go closer or tag them, then again, maybe we include those shadows. But I'll be watching this trend line very closely, because the pattern has been with NASDAQ, with the with NASDAQ and with Bitcoin, the same pattern. Testing the trend line, testing the 50-week moving average, and bouncing. That's been the pattern over and over again. And I just showed you, took the time to show you on NASDAQ, because Bitcoin, NASDAQ, and even the S&P are all testing their 50-week moving averages. And again, Bitcoin testing a trend line. Maybe it's hitting it right here and now, maybe a little bit lower if we include the shadows. NASDAQ bouncing off that trend line last week. Did we do it right here with Bitcoin, and we're going back and testing it? We'll see. But just below that is our 50-week moving average. And again, that could take us towards that 77,000. Remember, I talked about the support between 74,000 and 77,000. Remember that? We end up going lower and taking out this low. You've got a confluence of support just a little bit lower between 74,000 and 77,000. Our low over here was at 78,000. Watching this trend line closely, I don't know if we exclude the shadow or if we include it, but I think you're going to try to get a bounce off this trend line. If we do go lower, then again, we might get closer to the trend line. Now, again, this, if we do go lower, this bar right here could be a reversal bar, or again, if we get the reversal as we go into next week, we may just see an attempted recovery of this entire move down. It may look something like, something like this over here, or as we sold off right here, there's some type of recovery surrounding the 50-week moving average. So I'll be watching that closely. Again, not sure if we include the shadow or exclude it, but I wanted to present both of those opportunities, or both of those scenarios to you. The Bitcoin weekly chart. An important trend line, important moving averages to be watching for the week, though. Bitcoin, let's see what we lost for the week. We lost 14.39% for the week on Bitcoin. We had that sell off the previous week, and then we rebounded back up. This time we didn't rebound back up. Now coming to major support here. Test our low from 2 weeks ago. We'll be watching to see if we go a little bit lower or if we try to bounce off of it, but I think there's a very good chance you're going to try to get a rebound at this area of support. And again, we may go down and tag it, including the shadows there, but it is possible we don't do it that way, that we are going to exclude the shadows. Either scenario is possible, but again, you got a lot of support, and directly below is that 74 to 77,000 area. Now, this is the chart. This is a chart that I previously have been showing you, and I wanted to show that to you on the weekly chart because you had that 50-week moving average. We're just beyond our 200-period moving average, just above that 50-week moving average. And again, 200 is probably closer to the 40-week. It's really in between the kind of the 40-week and the 50-week moving average. But again, that 200, we're just underneath it. And I talked about how we try to bounce off the red trend line, excluding the shadows. We just saw that on the weekly chart a moment ago. And if we go a little bit lower, you got the blue trend line coming into play, including the shadows. So again, that could take us a little bit lower towards horizontal support. Directly below that, we have Bitcoin's average price. right below that. I talked about the possibility of a divergence developing if the low that we had, the bottoming tail, doesn't hold. You can form a divergence. Now, I told you we don't have to go to a new low because, again, the RSI does not look at the bottoming tail. It looks at the close, and the close is much higher. So we actually have a divergence right now. But, again, directly below we have this area. So I called the December top with this divergence right here, called the top right here with this divergence at the January 20th top, and both of those tops, the December 17th top, the January 20th, they formed these divergences, but they slammed right into that trend line, those trend lines in the weekly time frame. I told you, again, likely we were going to get a sell-off at both of those trend lines, and we ended up getting sell-offs at both of those trend lines. Now we're at this trend line. Are we going to bounce right here? Got a confluence of support with a bullish divergence that could be done, or if we go a little bit lower, maybe we take out that level and find a bottom there. You got the same divergence going on with the MACD. The MACD is going lower. Let me just show you this up close, but I wanted to show you here this important 2023 trend line on the daily chart as well as in the weekly time frame. Let's look at this up close. I think this is important. And again, I've talked about, again, a very good chance Bitcoin bottomed out with a bottoming tail right here. That's still very possible. And we're just coming back and testing the support zone. But if we go a little bit lower, you've got that 50-week moving average. And let me just go back to that chart for just a minute because I want to talk about the RSI on the weekly chart. But again, right there, the 50-week moving average, simple moving average, is coming in at 75,500 or so, or 75,600. So again, that's 75, and again, horizontal support here, 74,000 to 77,000. You got some key support right in that range. Our 50-week moving average is at, again, 75,500 or so. The trend line is just above that. So you've got some key support. But look at our RSI. Ever since our bullish diversions back over here at the bottom, we went into positive territory, and the pullbacks to the 50 area have given us a bounce at that 50-week moving average. Here, the RSI went below 50, but then it got back above it, and it reaffirmed the bullish 50-50 signal. You couldn't take out the 50 here, and you began that trend line really with the low here and the higher low here. But we were above 50 on the RSI, and then you got dropped below it, and you got back above it. It reaffirmed, because we didn't take out the 50, it reaffirmed a 50-50 bullish signal. You're above the 50-week moving average. You're above 50 on the RSI. That's a bullish 50-50. That's what I call a 50-50 signal. We rose higher. We ended up coming up here and ended up forming a little tiny divergence. Again, the RSI doesn't look at that peak. It doesn't look at the topping tail or bottoming tail. It just looks at the close, the open, the real body of the bar. We came down with this sell-off from the March high down to the August low, and we did it again. And then with the higher low that set up in September, we did it again. But then we reaffirmed, bouncing off those the 50-week moving average there, we reaffirmed the 50-50 signal with the RSI first here getting above it. We had that rally, but then we pulled back and we tested it again for the higher low, and then we did it again. And we moved into positive territory above 50 on the RSI and bounced after slightly breaching with the bottoming tail that 50-week moving average there at the September low of 2024. So you did it in August, you did it in September, and you got reaffirmed a 50-50 bullish signal. And then we went up here, we got the high over here. Now we're coming back to the 50. We're still above the 50. The RSI is broken 50. But if we bounce off the 50 or hold above it or bounce off of it or whatever, we could see the RSI attempt to go back up into positive territory, and you could still end up forming a massive negative divergence and still see Bitcoin go higher up to our upper channel line that I've been talking about in the weekly time frame. So again, just wanted to point this out that, again, the trend line, the 50-week, if we do end up going lower, is directly below, and you have that confluence of support between 74,000 and 77,000. Now, again, Nasdaq's testing the trend line, the 50-week. Bitcoin is just above the trend line and above the 50-week. We'll see if it reaches it or not. Like I said, if we exclude the shadows here in the weekly time frame, you're already at it. And we've already tagged it with the previous week. I pointed that out previously when I talked about trend line using the daily time frame. I talked about that when we first reached that level. I've shown you that chart a couple of times over the last couple of weeks here. This trend line goes all the way back to 2022. Should this one end up breaking, likely going to bounce off this level. And the question is, again, is it including or excluding the shadow? Are we there, or do we go just a little bit lower? So I think you've got a confluence of support here. But I think the RSI is going to end up going back into positive territory. I still believe Bitcoin's going to go make new highs. People's expectations for the bull market, they have unrealistic expectations. I think Bitcoin's going to go up to 135, 140, 145,000. Maybe you reach 150, but there's a lot of resistance in that 135, 145,000 area. Remember this, if we do go up to where I think we're going to go, remember how nobody thought this would happen. Now, I predicted the January 20th top. I predicted the December top as well, the day of both of those tops, day of the January bottom. But with predicting the January top and the sell-off, we've gone lower than I thought we'd go. So again, I saw the top and I saw the sell-off coming. We've even gone a little bit lower than where I thought we would go. I thought the January low might hold up and we get something more like the sideways thing rather than the flush out. And again, so the thing is, we could still reach these levels. So we don't have to. And again, like I said, the trend line may be already being reached if we exclude the shadows. Important trend line, the 50-week moving average, important, the RSI here, watching all of this. As I'm making the video, again, Bitcoin's now in the second hour of trading for the Monday session. It's up about 1.25% at the moment. It still can go lower. But if we go down to that 75,500 area, you also have another confluence of support. That's where Bitcoin's average price is right there. So again, directly below. So again, something to be paying attention to. Horizontal support at 74,000. Now again, this is Bitcoin's chart up close. And again, I talked about these divergences back at the peaks over here. You can see it right here on the MACD and the RSI. But took out the support zone, again, the January low right here, and this higher low that's set up right here with the tariffs. And again, I was expecting that low would probably, whoops, a little bit lower than that, that low would probably hold. We went a little bit lower than that level, rebounded back up into the trading range, got rejection at the 20 period, got rejection at the 20 period, and here we are. So do we go a little bit lower? Now, you already have the diversions. So let me be clear about that. We had those little diversions at our low right here, if you look at the wick here. But like I said, the RSI, it really could have just confirmed a higher low because the actual close was higher. But now we actually have a lower low on the closing basis. So now you actually have a divergence. Now, it may not be done yet. You may take out the support zone here, but you don't have to. You see, the support zone is this low right here and this low right here. Okay, this is the low. When we dropped below the 200, couldn't stay below it. Here we dropped below the 200 for a higher low, couldn't stay below it. We bounced, got the bottoming tails. Here we closed below it. So the risk is now we take out this low and go down to our 50-week moving average, our trend line of support, and maybe horizontal support or Bitcoin's average price. So that's what I'm looking at. But again, Bitcoin's likely bottoming because, again, either with a higher low right here, even though it's a higher low, it's still a divergence because, again, like I said, the RSI is not looking at the close. So you are closing below this level. So you have your divergence. This low might hold, but directly below that, a 50-week moving average and the trend line there in the weekly time frame. If we exclude the shadow, we're already at it. We're already at it right here. So it's possible you can get a bottom with this bounce in the support zone or directly below it, just under this area between 74,000 and 77,000. But I think, again, Bitcoin's in a bottoming process. Again, everybody's turned bearish on Bitcoin. They weren't bearish back when I called the top, the day of the top over here, when we got a rally on Inauguration Day and a reversal on inauguration of President Trump. We weren't bearish over here when I called the December top, the day of the December top with the doji, and again, both we turned off the major trend line of resistance in the weekly time frame at both of those highs, 108,000, 109,000. They weren't bearish. Now they're bearish. It usually gets bearish at bottoms as bottoms form, and they've been very bearish. They were bearish with the drop here, and then we rebounded, we dropped some more, and they got more bearish, and then we rebounded, and they've dropped some more, we've dropped more, and they're even more bearish. And Bitcoin is likely going to bottom surrounding the trend lines that I'm showing you, or this horizontal support zone right here, if we've already tagged the bottom with this bottoming tail, excluding the shadow. So that's what I wanted to show you with the RSI, is that we could still have the diversions already done here, but it's possible we still go below this level right here and get it down here a little bit lower, closer towards 75,000 to 77,000. Our low here was 78,000. We may breach that level briefly and then turn right back up. But again, you've got the diversions going on here. Let's look at the MACD. And again, right here, you got the same thing going on. You've got the MACD. The stochastic's doing the same thing. It's forming a divergence. Now, it may not be done yet, but I'm telling you, it is possible that this low can still hold. Technically, it could play out either way. Regardless, as I keep saying, I'm looking for a bottom surrounding the 200-week moving average, the 200-day moving average, and that 50-week moving average. We're just above that level. Talking about this 200-period moving average quite a bit. So again, you've got divergences that are possibly done, or you've got divergences that may be almost done if we end up taking out this level and going a little bit lower. But you'd still have the divergence, even if you did that on a closing basis, you would still have it just down in here somewhere between 74,000 and 77,000. But the horizontal support at 74,000 is likely going to hold. But you may get the bottom here at the support zone. So I wanted to talk about that. And we've talked about these divergences before. And again, I talked about the RSI, 50-50 signals there in the weekly time frame. But you got the same thing here. Over here, the 50-week, the green line right here, we lost that 50-week. Do you see that? We lost a 50-week, and you've got a 50-50 sell signal in that we turned below the 50-week, and you've been below it consistently through this decline. Okay, now here the 50-day moving average is right there, the green line right there. We're probably going to end up rallying back up towards it in the cloud of resistance right here, maybe in the trend line, and to test these levels, and then we'll see. But you got to be able to clear this level here. You got to be able to clear the trend line if you're going to test these cloud and the 100-period moving average, and maybe your 50. But notice here, again, we lost the 50 level on the RSI. We lost a 50 level on the daily chart, the 50-period moving average, and you've now been consistently below that level. The pull-ups to, after we lost a 50 here, we pulled up to it over here and over here. We pulled up to the 50, and you tested it a couple of times. Then we got rejection at the 50 there. A little hard to see because I have other moving averages and clouds and resistance levels, but you can see what I'm talking about. We got rejection there. Okay, and the pull-ups, and then we turn back down. Now we bounced out the 200, and where do we pull up to? With the rally with Trump's announcement of the crypto strategic reserve, we went up to that 50 level on the RSI. We went up to the 20 period. We didn't quite reach the 50, but we rallied towards it, and we stalled at that 50 level on the RSI. So could form a divergence. Now, what has to happen is you got to complete a divergence, and maybe it's done, maybe it's not done, but you got to complete it, and then you got to get back into positive territory, and that will end this. We can get back above the 20-period moving average and stay above the RSI, and then eventually make our way back up to the 50. I also have the 2050 signals where I watch the 20-period moving average in the weekly and the daily time frame with the RSI as well. So again, I use both of those quite often. So again, we'll see what happens. Now, as I'm making the video, we're in the second hour of trading, and Bitcoin is still up about 1.25%. Again, it still may go lower, but we'll see what happens right here.